Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're doing something a little bit different and honestly absolutely fascinating. We're going to treat a 10th grade high school English syllabus like an archaeological artifact. By objectively deconstructing the mechanics of a global literature course from Brooklyn Technical High School, we can actually see exactly how modern classrooms approach these really complex, often highly sensitive social topics. We're going to peel back the layers and see the gears turning right underneath.
Let's dive right in with this driving question. What is the relationship between individual power and institutional power? Now, this isn't just some late-night philosophical musing. This is an actual mandated question given to 15 and 16-year-olds to hook them into their coursework. It immediately asks these kids to frame their own lives against the massive weight of larger systems. It's a heavy, highly sophisticated way to start a school year.
So, to understand how a class actually navigates topics this heavy, we really need to break down its operating system. Here's our agenda for today. First, exploring power and agency. Second, the Socratic seminar protocol. Third, viewing through critical lenses. Fourth, designing the classroom culture. And fifth, assessment and accountability. All right, let's jump in.
Starting off with Section 1, Exploring Power and Agency. We're beginning with the foundation of the curriculum, setting the conceptual stage for the entire year. Right out of the gate, you can see the syllabus establishes power and agency as its absolutely central focus. Looking at these questions, you realize students aren't just reading books for the plot anymore. They're basically being trained to actively scan literature for power dynamics. They're continually asked to figure out how institutions, family structures, and global forces shape and sometimes entirely restrict individual lives.
Moving on to Section 2, the Socratic seminar protocol. Let's take a look at the exact mechanism for how students discuss these massive themes. Historically, Socratic dialogue is this free-flowing, open-ended pursuit of truth through constant questioning, right? But here, this modern version is meticulously engineered. As you can see, even the physical space in the classroom is tightly controlled. Students are assigned to specific timed rounds. If you're in round 1, you've got to sit right in the middle and speak, while the rest of the class sits on the outside just observing and taking mandatory notes. This perfectly illustrates how the curriculum structures what seems like open debate. When a student sits in that middle circle, they aren't just sharing their random thoughts. No way. They have to follow a rigid 3-step formula every single time they speak. They literally have to share a probing question, provide a text quote, and analyze literary devices. If you step outside that formula, well, you aren't properly participating in the seminar.
And why does this strict adherence matter? Because every single word is graded. Looking at the course rubrics, top scores require seamlessly integrating the text and moving the conversation forward. On the flip side, failing scores actually penalize students who struggle to complete the protocol or who share information deemed unfounded by the rubric. It literally defines the exact boundaries of what makes a valid contribution.
Section 3, Viewing through critical lenses. Now let's see how this highly structured discussion framework builds into the specific analytical framework students are required to use. The curriculum explicitly teaches a concept called critical lenses. They directly define this for the students using a really effective metaphor. They tell the kids to think of these lenses as different styles of glasses you put on to help you see the world and the text in a completely different way.
The teachers actually provide a fascinating visual anchor for this in their lesson plans. Check this out. On the left, a scratched, damaged lens obscures the truth and makes everything blurry. But on the right, these colored lenses show how viewing text through specific tints drastically alters the whole picture. Suddenly, the sky isn't just blue anymore, it's neon green or purple, depending on the exact glasses you decide to put on.
So, what exactly are those tinted glasses?
Well, the curriculum requires these 10th graders to put on very specific modern ideological lenses. We're talking feminist, Marxist, critical race theory, post-colonial, and more. This means the open inquiry of that Socratic seminar we just talked about is actually being structurally filtered right through these distinct social-political viewpoints.
And this graphic straight from their materials perfectly summarizes the whole mechanic. The literary theory, whether it's Marxist or critical race theory, sits physically between the student's eyes and the text. The course provides the glasses, and those glasses actively alter how the text is viewed and understood. The text really can't be read on its own terms anymore. It has to be processed through the theory. Moving to Section 4, Designing the Classroom Culture. To maintain this complex intellectual environment where kids are analyzing power dynamics through critical lenses, the course constructs its own specific behavioral rules.
Because we're dealing with highly sensitive topics here, the class creates class agreements. These basically function as a strict social contract. They outline the exact expectations for how students must interact with one another during these highly engineered, lens-driven discussions.
The language in these agreements is incredibly specific. Students are literally told to apologize if you do harm and make space for unheard voices. These agreements really highlight a classroom heavily focused on social equity and emotional safety. It demands that students actively self-monitor and manage their impact on their peers to an incredibly high degree.
This is all reinforced visually with word clouds presented to the kids, promoting concepts like authenticity, responsibility, and compassion. In fact, the syllabus explicitly states the classroom should be a sanctuary for their authentic selves. So, it's an environment that highly regulates interpersonal behavior, essentially ensuring the structural goals of the curriculum can be met without any major friction or conflict.
And finally, Section 5, Assessment and Accountability. Let's take a look at the ultimate enforcement mechanism here. How is all this ideological parsing and behavioral adherence actually tracked and graded?
The course uses a competency-based portfolio system, but you really want to pay close attention to the academic integrity policy. There is an absolute zero-tolerance policy for AI or outside help. The syllabus insists students can never use resources as a substitute for their own genuine ideas, but in practice, this creates a closed loop, forcing students to rely solely on the skills and the specific critical lenses they practiced inside the classroom.
And the accountability? It's placed entirely on the shoulders of the 15-year-old. The syllabus states, you will be responsible for using this rubric to check your work. Think about that. Students are expected to completely internalize these rubrics. They have to automatically self-regulate their output to match the required Socratic protocol and the required critical lenses long before a teacher even looks at it.
Taking a step back, the contrast we've uncovered today is pretty stark, right? On one hand, you have the historical idea of a Socratic debate, free, open-ended philosophical inquiry without predefined borders. But what we see executed here is a highly engineered, rubric-driven machine. It essentially borrows the word Socratic, but uses it as a mechanism to process texts through specific, predetermined academic theories and values mandated by the institution.
Which leaves us with a really fascinating final thought to ponder. When an institution requires you to wear a very specific pair of tinted glasses and then grades you on exactly how well you follow the protocol of wearing them, are you learning how to think critically, or are you learning what to think? When open inquiry is so heavily engineered and guarded, how does that ultimately shape the worldview of the unsuspecting student? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.